Mario Party 9 completely revolutionized the series, but did you know that the game could have been entirely different? Today, I'll be covering the development history, unused spaces, unused sounds, and unused textures in Mario Party 9 for the Nintendo Wii. There are a series of unused spaces in Mario Party 9, and it's mainly due to its changing format. You see, this is the first time that players were slapped into a cart together instead of roaming around alone, so ND Cube had to ensure that the game was balanced. And to be honest, their balancing the final game is rather questionable. The textures of the spaces in-game are split into large and small icons. Starting with the large icons, L_star10 is a 10 mini-star space. In the final game, these kind of spaces only go up to 5, and I think it's somewhat reasonable to not include this, but it would be extremely unreasonable to include D_star10, a space that will grant 10 mini zitars. That word's kinda awkward. The anxiety this stupid dice block gives me is already wicked, so having this in my path would scare me to my core. But there are 4 unused small icons. Magma_05 is an unused space that would rise the lava 5 spaces specifically for Magma Mine. Keeping this in the game would only worsen the player's experience, so its removal is a great call. P_JP03 is an unused space that would increase the jackpot with 3 mini stars specifically on Bowser Station. In the final game, there are only +5 and +8 spaces, and I'd agree with ND Cube that the +3 spaces wouldn't have a true impact on the game, and would overall slow down the filling of the jackpot. Red is simply a red space. In previous entries of the series, the red space would have taken coins from the player, but this isn't any ordinary Mario Party entry, so its existence is rather mysterious. Even more mysterious is a space named N_JP, a space that seems to be filled with many zitars. The image, filled with purple stars combined with a dark red background, is almost creepy in a way, and its name implied that it would have been used for a minus jackbox space, but I think that this space would have just taken away half of your mini stars, because for whatever reason, ND Cube was obsessed with taking away half your earned goods. Like 4 of the boards in this game have dumb game mechanics that take away all of your stuff, and most of the time it's just down to dumb luck. Like on Bomb Factory, the board is designed to take away half of your mini stars a minimum of 2 times. Like, who the heck decided that? There truly isn't a huge batch of unused content of Mario Party 9 left in the game files, and although that's a shame, Nintendo released footage of Mario Party 9 at E3 in June 2011, and holy guacamole, this game has changed. You don't even need to watch the video for 2 seconds to realize that something is very different. The E3 trailer opens up with an early version of Toad Road, and it's abundantly clear that a lot happened from this point in development to its release 9 months later in March in 2012. To start with the spaces, this backspace is very different from the final version's texture. It's very cartoony, while the current one feels somewhat professional. I'm struggling to figure out what on earth is going on with this texture right here. It looks like one of those piranhas, but I just don't know. Although the map is strikingly similar to the final versions, with the stone hill halfway through the map and the Toad house is a quarter of the way through, there are some subtle differences, like the Vine to Heaven before the first boss fight was originally on top of the hill, and the Screw You path under the bridge is originally pretty chill. Moving on to the actual gameplay, the dice is very linear, as it's just a still model with numbers flashing on it. The text in the bottom center of the screen is a different font from the final version. In fact, you never see the original New Super Mario Bros. Wii font in this entire trailer. Instead, you see a font that's a lot uglier. ND Cube made a good call in getting rid of this. Now that we're on the board, we can actually see a lot more. The mini star counters in the top left are completely different from the final textures, and there isn't a spot for the dice blocks. There's a counter in the top right stating how far away the captain is from the next to the mini stars that doesn't exist in the final version. Blue spaces do state itemu, which roughly translates to item, but we don't actually see any items at this point in development. Let's take a moment to discuss the wicked economy in this game. In the final build of Mario Party 9, mini stars are put into batches of 3, 5, and 10 on the board, but in this build of the game, it's only put into batches of 1. In the usual game of Toad Road, most players would have at least 3 at this point, but none of the players even have 3 in this scene. After Peach lands in a lucky space, there's this crazy scene of her jumping past a bunch of spaces. This is actually pretty cool, and it kinda disappoints me that ND Cube will get rid of this in exchange for a lazy dice roll that only gives 5 mini stars at the most. In fact, the lucky spaces are so dumb that it could literally take 2 seconds on the board to get the same amount of mini stars, but instead it takes 30. ND Cube, this is just lazy. Moving on to the minigames, Thwomper Room is nearly identical to its final version aside from the font in the top right corner. Skyjinks, Loggerheads, Goomba Spotting, and Peak Precision all look the exact same as their final versions. Pianta Pool, Growing Up, Goomba Bowling, Ballistics, Tuber Tug, Hazard Hold, Ruins Rumble, Bumper Sparks, Tumble Tumble, and Fungi Frenzy, which is a garbage name by the way, who named that, all look nearly the exact same, with the only difference being the font used for the counters. Launch Break's graphics for the energy meter were slightly different, as the current button's drop shadow was replaced with a black outline. Ernest's font is different, and the hands representing players are actually pretty different. The number representing the controller number corresponding to the player is on the hand compared to being below it in the final game. But by far the weirdest thing in this trailer is actually a cut minigame. It's definitely a Bowser Jr. minigame, and the goal seems to be to simply catch Bowser Jr., but there are already enough minigames where you need to catch Bowser Jr. before the time runs out. The game feels like it was recycled from a scene from New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and this minigame is a complete mystery, so we may never know what it may have entailed. There are 2 audio tracks left in the game files of Mario Party 9 that I'm somewhat confident aren't in the final game. Both of the names for the audio files start with BGM_BD_BEV, which I'm assuming is background music to board to the event. Here's the first track. I have no idea what ETS stands for, but this seems like it would have been used for something like a captain event, or even that scene you watch when you fail to board in solo mode. Now on to the next track. The best way I can describe it is, well, mysterious. Recently, there was some data found by Mick Kraken Arts on Twitter of early screenshots of Mario Party 9's Captain events. These screenshots would have been seen if you were to accept Toad's request to explain the rules. First, there is an early screenshot of the side-by-side zone left over. You can tell just by looking at the screenshot that Bob-on Factory looked completely different during its development. It feels much darker and it has a lot less personality. You'll also notice that the question mark spaces were changed later in development, as the texture in the screenshot is different from the final texture. Now going back to the economy, you'll notice that there are a lot fewer mini-stars on the board in this early screenshot, as they came in batches of 1 mini-stars. Next up, there is an early screenshot of the Sunken Treasure Captain event, but this screenshot doesn't look too different from the final version. You'll notice that there is only one path and the water looks a lot deeper. The light economy is also present in the screenshot, as there are only 2 mini-stars in the screenshot. The next 3 screenshots are all from the Bowser Station board, starting with a leftover screenshot of the Heartstar Colony Captain event. Although this screenshot doesn't reveal much gameplay, it shows a lot more of the aesthetic of Bowser Station. This screenshot also plays into the name of Heartstar Colony, with a multitude of different heart-shaped models versus the final version, as the only place of heart theming is the dice blocks. There is an early screenshot of the Bingo Colony left over in the game files. You'll notice that the background has a lot less personality compared to the final version. The numbers on the board are also a lot brighter in the final version, and the UI is present in the screenshot. Finally, there is an early screenshot of the Speedstar Colony Captain event. Compared to the final version, the skybox looks a lot darker and the surface is a weird greenish color compared to the purple in the final version. The paths are also 1 space longer in the final version compared to the early version. The early version used backspace instead of the dash spaces seen in the final version, and there are also some weird blue mini-star spaces that didn't make the cut from the final build of Mario Party 9. There are a lot of unused textures left over in the game files of Mario Party 9. To start, there are 2 dummy textures. One is in a black font with a white background, and the other is in a gray background with a white font. Both of these would have probably been used as, well, dummy textures. There are 2 unused textures for a finishing bonus after a boss battle. You'll notice that the font for the texture is completely different from those seen in any other texture, which is actually pretty weird. The katakana translates to finish bonus if that wasn't apparent. There's a texture with 15 old texture spaces left over. To list what they all look like, it's a blue space, a reverse space, a lucky space, a dry bone space, a dice block space, a happening space. What is this, an arrow? A minigame space? Bowser space? A shuffle space? A team up of Bowser Jr. space? A star space? A black star space? And I have no idea what this last one is. This is super duper weird, and some of these spaces look like that could have been carried over from Mario Party 8. This next texture is simply the old font and numbers, and they can be seen in the Mario Party 9 E3 trailer. This texture is also pretty weird, and it looks like something that could have been carried over from one of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games games. Finally, the next texture is named Game Over because the katakana translates to Game Over. I'm pretty confident that this isn't in the final game because there isn't animated texture that says game over, and the font looks completely different from the Japanese Mario font.